Imagine standing at the edge of a crowded street at night, neon lights flickering above you, thousands of faces rushing past in every direction. Some are laughing, some are silent, some are lost in the glow of their phones, some are hurrying home after a long day. In the blur of motion, one question cuts through the noise like a blade of light. Who among them is truly happy? Who, beneath the layers of routine and responsibility, wealth and struggle, joy and pain, has found the secret that every human across time has searched for? This question, more than any invention, any war, any empire, has haunted us since the beginning of consciousness. And, on this journey, we will chase it across centuries, across cultures, across the brain itself, to uncover what science has learned about the oldest desire of them all: happiness. For as long as humans have walked the earth, they have asked what it means to live a good life. Ancient philosophers in Greece debated whether happiness was pleasure or virtue. In India, sages sat beneath trees and meditated on liberation from suffering. In China, Confucius taught that harmony and duty were paths to joy, while Taoist masters whispered that letting go was the true secret. Every civilization, in its own way, painted happiness not as a luxury, but as the center of existence. Yet even with thousands of years of wisdom, the mystery never ended, because happiness is not simple, and it is never permanent. It flickers, it fades, it hides, and then it returns in the unlikeliest of places. The modern world, with its skyscrapers, satellites, and supercomputers, promised that progress would make us happy. And yet, across wealthy nations, rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness are rising. We have more comfort than kings of the past, yet so often, less contentment. This paradox is what pushed scientists, psychologists, and neuroscientists to turn their instruments toward happiness itself. Could joy be measured? Could fulfillment be mapped in the folds of the brain? Could satisfaction be studied in the laboratory? For the first time in history, the most timeless of human questions became a scientific one. What they found is astonishing. Happiness is not one thing. It is not a finish line. It is not waiting in the bank account, the corner office, the spotlight, or the next purchase. Happiness is both fragile and resilient. It is chemical and cultural. It is individual and collective. It is the laughter of a child and the quiet relief of an old man who feels he lived well. It is in the blood, in the brain, in the stories we tell ourselves. It is in the way we love, the way we give, the way we grow. And the science of happiness, far from reducing it to numbers, has revealed it to be far richer, deeper, and more human than anyone expected. But to understand happiness, we must walk. We must leave the laboratory and step into the streets of the world, past and present, to see how different people, in different corners of the earth, have pursued the same elusive treasure. Our first stop is ancient Athens. The philosopher Aristotle, more than 2,000 years ago, looked around at his society and asked, "Why do we live?" His answer was clear. We live in order to achieve eudaimonia. The word, often translated as happiness, is deeper than pleasure. It means flourishing, living in harmony with virtue, becoming the best version of oneself. Aristotle argued that true happiness comes not from indulgence but from meaning. A soldier who protects his city, a parent who raises children with care, a thinker who devotes his life to wisdom. All may suffer, all may face hardship, but through purpose they achieve happiness. His insight foreshadowed what science now confirms: pleasure alone is not enough. Without meaning, joy dissolves like mist. Now let's cross the world to India, where at nearly the same time, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, taught a radical idea. Life, he said, is filled with suffering, but suffering is not the end of the story. By training the mind through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, people can break free from the endless chase of desire. In Buddhist monasteries, monks practiced meditation for hours, quieting the storm of thoughts, and many reported states of deep contentment unshaken by external events. Centuries later, neuroscientists would place Tibetan monks in MRI machines and discover that meditation rewired the brain, strengthening areas linked to empathy and calm. The ancient practice, once seen as mystical, was revealed as a practical training of the nervous system, a tool for happiness accessible to anyone willing to practice. In China, Confucius shaped another vision. Happiness is not found in isolation, but in relationships and harmony. To live with respect, to honor family, to fulfill one's role in society, these were paths to well-being. Meanwhile, Taoism taught almost the opposite. Let go, flow like water, and stop clinging. Between them, these traditions reflected truths that psychologists now call communal well-being and acceptance. Across time, East and West, the threads begin to weave together. But what does modern science say when it cuts happiness open under the microscope? Inside the brain, happiness is a symphony of chemicals. When you taste your favorite food, dopamine surges, rewarding you for survival. When you hug someone you trust, oxytocin flows, strengthening the bond. When you achieve a goal, serotonin stabilizes your mood. When you laugh until your ribs hurt, endorphins flood in, dulling pain. Each chemical has a purpose, honed by evolution. Pleasure motivated our ancestors to eat, to bond, to reproduce, to persist. But the brain was never designed to keep us permanently blissful. It was designed to keep us chasing, to survive. This is why happiness feels fleeting. The brain resets, pushing us to seek again. This cycle is called the hedonic treadmill. No matter how high we climb, we adapt, and the joy fades. Think of the lottery winner who feels euphoric for months, only to return to their baseline. Or the accident survivor who, after grief, learns to smile again. Both extremes prove the same truth: humans adapt. Science estimates that about 50% of our happiness is influenced by genetics, about 10% by circumstances, and the remaining 40% by intentional actions. Our habits, our thoughts, our choices. This 40% is where the science of happiness becomes hope, because it means we can train ourselves toward joy. One of the simplest but most powerful practices is gratitude. In a study, people who wrote down 3 things they were thankful for each night reported higher happiness after just weeks. Gratitude shifts attention from what is missing to what is present, from scarcity to abundance. It literally reshapes neural pathways, strengthening circuits of positivity. In Japan, this echoes the practice of Nikken, structured reflection on gratitude toward parents, teachers, friends, even strangers. In the United States, gratitude journals fill bookstore shelves. Across the world, science and tradition converge on the same habit: thankful hearts are happier hearts. Another key is relationships. In Harvard's longest-running study of adult development, spanning more than 80 years, researchers found that the greatest predictor of happiness was not money, fame, or career success. It was close relationships. People who maintained strong bonds with family, friends, or community lived longer, healthier, and more joyful lives. Loneliness, by contrast, was as deadly as smoking or alcoholism. In the age of social media, where connections are counted in likes and followers, this finding is urgent. Real happiness requires real human bonds, face-to-face, voice-to-voice, heart-to-heart. But happiness is not only found in love and gratitude. It thrives in growth. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi studied artists, athletes, and musicians, and discovered the state he called flow, that timeless immersion when skill meets challenge, when a painter forgets hunger at the canvas, when a surfer loses track of hours on the waves, when a coder loses themselves in the rhythm of logic. Flow is intensely satisfying, and people who regularly experience it report greater well-being. Flow requires neither fame nor riches, only passion, skill, and the courage to enter difficulty. Yet, perhaps the deepest lesson of the science of happiness is this: meaning outweighs pleasure. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, observed that those who survived were not always the strongest or the healthiest, but those who found meaning even in suffering. A father who wanted to see his child again, a thinker who wanted to finish a manuscript, a prisoner who wanted to bear witness to truth. These people endured with a spark that despair could not extinguish. Frankl later wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Modern research confirms it. People with a sense of purpose report higher life satisfaction, even when their daily pleasures are few. Now let's travel to Bhutan, a small Himalayan kingdom where leaders dared to measure not gross domestic product, but gross national happiness. They asked citizens about community, culture, spirituality, and environment, not just income. The world laughed at first, but soon researchers realized Bhutan was onto something profound. While not free from problems, Bhutan reminded us that true wealth is not in dollars but in dignity, not in markets but in meaning. Inspired, the United Nations began publishing the World Happiness Report, ranking nations not by power but by well-being. Each year, the same pattern emerges. The happiest countries are not always the richest, but those with trust, equality, and strong communities, places like Finland, Denmark, and Iceland, where social bonds are high and corruption is low. Yet modern life poses challenges no society has faced before. Smartphones promise connection but often deliver comparison. Algorithms feed us envy disguised as inspiration. Consumer culture tells us we are one purchase away from joy, but science shows the opposite. Materialism corrodes happiness. We rush, we hustle, we burn out, all while wondering why joy feels distant. In many ways, the science of happiness is not teaching us new truths, but reminding us of old ones we have forgotten. Happiness is not bought. It is not a performance. It is not something given, but something grown. It is in the walk with a friend at dusk, the shared meal, the helping hand, the quiet prayer, the laugh that erupts without warning. It is in the moments we are fully alive, undistracted, connected. And yet, happiness is not the elimination of pain. Every life will know sorrow, loss, grief. The science of happiness does not deny this. Instead, it teaches that resilience, acceptance, and meaning allow joy to return even after devastation. The mother who loses a child but creates a foundation in their memory. The refugee who, after losing a homeland, builds community in a new country. The patient who, despite illness, finds joy in teaching others. These stories are not exceptions, they are proof of the human capacity to weave light into darkness. So what is the science of happiness, after all this journey? It is the marriage of biology and story, of neurons and nations, of chemicals and choices. It tells us that happiness flickers in the brain, but also blooms in culture. It warns us that our instincts to chase wealth and status may betray us. It urges us to cultivate gratitude, nurture relationships, seek flow, live with meaning, and care for others. It reminds us that joy is fragile but renewable, personal but also political. In the end, happiness is both science and art. It can be measured in serotonin, but also seen in a smile. It can be graphed in surveys, but also felt in silence between friends. It can be pursued individually, but flourishes collectively. To be happy is to be human, and to be human is to forever seek happiness. And so we return to the crowded street at night, neon lights above, thousands of faces passing. Who among them is truly happy? Perhaps the young man laughing with his grandmother, perhaps the mother holding her child, perhaps the stranger who just bought food for someone in need, perhaps the quiet soul walking alone but at peace with the stars. Happiness does not wear a uniform. It does not shout. It lives in small acts, small moments, small truths. The science of happiness has given us data, maps, brain scans, and surveys. But in the end, it has given us something more precious. A reminder that happiness is not a prize at the finish line, but the way we travel, step by step, together. In the end, the science of happiness is not a secret reserved for philosophers or scientists, nor is it a prize at the finish line of life. It is something deeply human, woven into the everyday moments we too often overlook. Happiness reveals itself not in perfection or wealth, but in the small and genuine experiences of connection, kindness, purpose, and gratitude. From the quiet practices of ancient traditions to the groundbreaking research of modern psychology and neuroscience, the lessons converge on a simple truth. Happiness is not a destination but a way of living. Across cultures and centuries, we see the same patterns. People find joy in love, in friendship, in meaningful work, in acts of generosity, in laughter, and even in resilience during hardship. These are not accidents, but reflections of how our minds and bodies are designed. Our biology rewards cooperation, our emotions thrive on belonging, and our spirits lift when we serve something greater than ourselves. The global journey through the science of happiness reminds us that no single formula exists. Instead, happiness is a tapestry, created from choices, attitudes, and relationships. It is about cultivating habits that nurture well-being, such as practicing gratitude, embracing compassion, pursuing growth, and valuing time over possessions. Ultimately, happiness is less about chasing after something outside us and more about recognizing what is already within reach. It is a practice, not a pursuit, a process, not a prize. To be human is to seek it, and to discover along the way that the path has always been closer than we thought. The science does not just explain happiness, it reminds us to live it.